I think this upcoming week on General Hospital looks like it could push several major storylines into much more dangerous territory. And to me, the most interesting part is how multiple characters seem to be reaching a breaking point at the same time. The preview opens with Laura Collins and Lucas Jones sharing a serious conversation. Laura tells Lucas that they need his help, while Sonny Corinthos confidently declares that they are going to stop Jim Sidwell. What immediately stood out to me was Lucas' reaction. He looks genuinely stunned, which makes me wonder just how far Laura and Sonny are willing to go. Considering Lucas already has personal reasons to want Sidwell brought down, along with his frustration over everything connected to WSB director Ross Cullum, I can easily see him joining forces with them despite the risks involved. Meanwhile, another storyline appears to be moving into very dangerous territory. Michael Corinthos is shown talking with Jacinda Bracken, and his words suggest he is actively waiting for someone to make a mistake. Michael says that once they cross the line, everything will be exposed. From my perspective, this confirms that he is still focused on proving something about the growing connection between Willow Kane and Harrison Chase. The question is whether Michael's plan will actually work, or whether someone else will interfere before things go too far. That brings me to what might be the most talked about moment of the preview. Willow and Chase are shown together at the Quartermain boathouse in what appears to be a very personal moment. Willow gently places her hand on Chase's shoulder, and the atmosphere feels noticeably more intimate than a simple friendship scene. What caught my attention even more was Chase's reaction. He appears to look at Willow's hand as if he is suddenly realizing there may be deeper feelings involved. Whether that interpretation is right or wrong remains to be seen, but the scene definitely feels loaded with emotional tension. Then comes the twist. Just as this moment unfolds, Tracy Quartermain walks by and sees it happening. If there is one person capable of turning an awkward situation into a full-scale family explosion, it is Tracy. I was wondering whether she will confront them immediately or use the information strategically. Either option could create major consequences for everyone involved. The other huge storyline centers on Carly Spencer and Jocelyn Jacks. Carly appears convinced that something is terribly wrong. She insists that Jocelyn would never leave without saying goodbye and concludes that someone must have taken her. As Carly speaks, viewers see Jocelyn imprisoned at Windermere. Rather than waiting to be rescued, she takes matters into her own hands. She climbs onto a chair, tampers with the light fixture and manages to obtain something she can use to pick the lock on her cell door. I have to admit, this sequence makes Jocelyn look resourceful and determined. She successfully unlocks the door, but the real question is what happens next. Escaping a locked room is one thing. Escaping Windermere without being caught is something entirely different. Overall, I think this preview is setting up a week packed with confrontations, betrayals, and discoveries. Laura and Sonny are preparing for a major move against Sidwell. Michael continues manipulating events behind the scenes. Tracy may have just witnessed something explosive involving Willow and Chase. And Jocelyn appears closer than ever to freedom. Whether these plans succeed or completely fall apart is what should make the week ahead especially interesting in Port Charles. I've been thinking about where this storyline is heading on General Hospital, and I'm not convinced that Cyrus Sidwell is going anywhere, even if Sonny Corinthos is preparing to make his biggest move against him yet. Looking at the preview for the week of June 1st to 5th, Sonny and Laura Collins appear determined to finally bring Sidwell down. They're even recruiting Lucas Jones to help execute their plan, which shows just how serious the situation has become. Right now, Sidwell has both Sonny and Laura backed into a corner. The leverage comes from those incriminating photos involving the late Professor Henry Hank Dalton, images that place Laura in a very compromising position. As long as Sidwell has that ammunition, he holds the advantage. What makes things even more interesting is the information that came from Britt Westbourne before her departure. That revelation about Pascal being the person who cleaned up Dalton's murder suddenly gave Sonny and Laura a possible path forward. If Pascal can be convinced to turn against Sidwell, the entire power dynamic could shift overnight. The problem, of course, is Pascal's apparent dislike of Lucas. That makes Lucas a risky choice for the mission, and it creates an obstacle that could complicate everything before the plan even gets off the ground. Still, I think the bigger question isn't whether Sonny and Laura can expose Sidwell. The bigger question is whether they can actually eliminate him as a threat once and for all. That idea has been floating around for months. Jason Morgan hinted at it before leaving town, and more recently Rick Lansing suggested something similar. The message has been clear. As long as Sidwell remains in the picture, nobody is truly safe. I could easily see Sonny using information from Pascal to infiltrate Windermere. Maybe he handles it personally, or perhaps he relies on Brick to do the dirty work. Either way, it feels like a major confrontation is coming. Now, Sidwell is unquestionably one of the show's most dangerous villains. He's charismatic, entertaining, and always fascinating to watch, but he's also ruthless. He destroys lives without remorse and rarely shows any concern for the damage he causes. From a story perspective, he's become Port Charles' public enemy number one. That's exactly why I have a hard time believing he'll be killed off. Maybe I'm wrong, but soap operas thrive on strong villains. Heroes need someone formidable standing in their way, and Sidwell currently fills that role perfectly. If Sonny attempts a shooting, engineers an explosion, or launches some other elaborate attack, I can absolutely imagine Sidwell being seriously injured. I can even picture him ending up in a life-or-death situation. What I can't picture is him actually dying. To me, the more likely outcome is that Sonny's plan succeeds just enough to weaken Sidwell and strip away some of his power, but not enough to remove him from the canvas entirely. That would keep the conflict alive while allowing the story to move into its next phase. There's also another factor worth considering. It feels like there are still other antagonists who could face consequences before Sidwell does, including Ross Colton. Because of that, I suspect Sidwell's story is far from over. My prediction is that Sonny will make his move, Sidwell will survive, and the failed takedown will only intensify their rivalry. Instead of ending the war, it may create an even more dangerous chapter, one where Sidwell comes back angrier, more desperate, and more determined to strike back than ever before. As I look ahead to the next 3 weeks of General Hospital, it feels like the show is setting up several major turning points at once. From dangerous revenge plots and shocking misunderstandings to emotional farewells and family secrets, there's a lot happening in Port Charles. One storyline that immediately caught my attention is Tracy Quartermain's latest mission. It seems she's determined to force Jen Sidwell out of deception, and she'll reportedly turn to Rick Lansing for help. At the same time, Michael Corinthos appears willing to play dirty. His plan to push Willow Kane and Harrison Chase closer together could have unintended consequences, especially if Tracy witnesses a suspicious moment between them. I think this could create even more tension and misunderstandings than Michael anticipates. Meanwhile, Nina Reeves will apparently make a bold move involving Jack Brennan. After choosing not to follow through with Brennan's planned injection, and instead disposing of the syringe, Nina may believe she has proven her loyalty. From her perspective, that decision could open the door to an alliance. Whether Brennan sees it the same way is another question entirely. The Windermere situation also looks increasingly dangerous. Sonny Corinthos and Laura Collins will reportedly bring Lucas Jones into their efforts regarding Pascal. But I have a feeling Lucas may find himself in deeper trouble than expected. If Sidwell mistakenly concludes that Pascal was responsible for Marco Rio's attack, the fallout could become deadly. What makes this even more concerning is that viewers already know the truth points elsewhere. Carly Spencer may start sensing that Lucas is getting pulled into something far more dangerous than he realizes. If that happens, her search for answers could place her directly in the middle of the conflict. Another storyline that fascinates me involves Ethan Lovett and the possibility that his past is catching up with him. Alexis Davis may confront him after seeing a photo connecting him to Delilah Wilson. Questions surrounding Phoebe's paternity could become impossible to ignore. From what I'm seeing, Alexis may believe Ethan needs to make a decision before Chase and Brooklyn become even more emotionally attached to Phoebe. However, Ethan may feel the child is already where she belongs. I could easily see him arguing that Chase and Brooklyn should continue building their future as adoptive parents. Then there's Ava Jerome, who rarely lets valuable information go to waste. If she discovers Ethan's connection to Delilah, I wouldn't be surprised if she uses that knowledge as leverage. Ava has always known how to turn secrets into weapons, and this situation may be no exception. Looking ahead to the week of June 8th to 12th, the search for Rocco and Britt Westbourne is expected to intensify. Britt will reportedly work tirelessly to find them, but Ross Cullum is pursuing them as well, and his intentions seem far more sinister. If Cullum tracks them down first, Britt could find herself facing an impossible challenge, protecting Rocco while trying to stay alive. At the same time, their time together on the run appears likely to strengthen their bond, which could make the stakes even more emotional when danger closes in. Back in Port Charles, Windermere may become the site of another major crisis. If Sidwell believes Pascal is responsible for Marco's death, he could target the wrong person entirely. The tragedy here is that viewers know the real culprit is Callum, yet that truth may not come to light before more damage is done. One of the most intriguing developments involves Jocelyn Jacks. Apparently she has access to weapons left behind by Anna Devane, and I'm wondering if she's preparing a risky escape plan. Rather than remaining a prisoner, Jocelyn may decide to fight back against Cassius facing herself. I could see her pretending to gain Cassius's trust, hiding her true intentions until the perfect moment arrives. If that happens, the confrontation could become one of the most intense scenes of the month. During the week of June 15th to 19th, attention may shift to Curtis Ashford and his legal troubles. Curtis reportedly hopes for a plea deal, but Isaiah Gannon may have very different ideas about what justice should look like. Curtis desperately wants to be present for the birth of his child, yet Isaiah may believe prison is exactly where he belongs. If Derek's medical procedure ends badly, Isaiah's resentment could grow even stronger. Caught in the middle is Portia Robinson, who seems destined to face enormous stress. I think there's a real possibility that all the pressure surrounding these conflicts could affect her pregnancy. If she goes into labor unexpectedly, the situation could quickly become frightening for everyone involved. Another major question involves Michael Corinthos and the secret surrounding Brooklyn. Michael appears determined to expose the truth about the accident and Brooklyn's role in it while keeping himself out of the line of fire. If Chase eventually learns that Brooklyn has been hiding such a significant secret, their marriage could face one of its toughest challenges yet. And finally, one of the biggest emotional moments of June appears to be Christina Corinthos Davis's departure. With her medical school exit approaching, she will reportedly begin saying goodbye to Port Charles. Whether her absence is temporary or the beginning of a much larger chapter remains to be seen, but it certainly feels like a significant turning point for her character. Overall, I think these next 3 weeks are shaping up to be a mix of danger, secrets, betrayals, and emotional farewells. Several storylines seem ready to collide at once, and if even half of these developments unfold as expected, Port Charles could look very different by the end of June. I think this upcoming moment on General Hospital could create far more chaos than it appears on the surface. From the way the previews are set up, it feels like trouble is brewing, and at the center of it are Harrison Chase and Willow Tate. In the preview for the week of June 1st to 5th, Chase and Willow are shown together at the Quartermain boathouse. Chase is wearing only swim shorts while Willow is in a bikini. What immediately caught my attention was Willow gently placing her hand on Chase's shoulder while staring at him intently. Chase, meanwhile, looks down at her hand with an expression that seems equal parts confused and uncomfortable. To me, that scene feels significant because it comes right after Brooklyn Quartermain delivered a very direct warning. During the previous week, Brooklyn made it crystal clear that she wanted Willow nowhere near her husband. She even waited until Chase was out of earshot before confronting Willow, showing just how serious she was about the situation. What makes this even messier is that both Chase and Willow are married. Willow may be unhappy in her marriage to Drew Kane, but that doesn't change the fact that boundaries exist. On top of that, Willow knows Chase and Brooklyn are trying to adopt little Phoebe Wilson. That knowledge makes her continued presence around Chase look even more questionable. Then there's the biggest complication of all, Tracy Quartermain. The promo appears to show Tracy walking by and witnessing the interaction between Willow and Chase. If that's exactly what happens, I have a hard time believing Tracy will simply ignore it. The real question is whether her anger will be directed at both of them or mostly at Chase. I was wondering if Tracy might actually hold Chase more responsible. From her perspective, he is the one married to her granddaughter, and she may expect more loyalty and better judgment from him than from Willow. If that's the case, Chase could be in for a brutal lecture. At the same time, there's another possibility. Tracy could decide not to immediately tell Brooklyn what she saw. She knows Brooklyn already has plenty on her plate, and she may feel that exposing this situation right now would only add more stress. Instead, Tracy could try handling it herself by warning Chase, Willow, or both of them. The problem with that approach is that it might unintentionally give Willow more room to continue pursuing whatever agenda she has. If Tracy keeps quiet and doesn't realize Brooklyn already confronted Willow, then Willow may see no real consequences for continuing to insert herself into Chase's life. In fact, I think there's an argument that Brooklyn's warning may have had the opposite effect. Rather than scaring Willow away, it may have challenged her. The upcoming boathouse scene almost feels like someone testing boundaries rather than respecting them. Whether I'm right or wrong, all signs seem to be pointing toward Chase and Willow eventually crossing a line. With Michael Corinthos still waiting in the wings, the potential fallout could be enormous. If Tracy truly witnesses this interaction, it may be the spark that ignites the next major explosion in Port Charles. The only question is how long it takes before the truth reaches Brooklyn and what happens when it does. I think one of the most unexpected and entertaining developments on General Hospital right now is seeing Alexis and Ava working together again. Not that long ago, these two could barely be in the same room without trading threats or finding new ways to blackmail each other. Their feud escalated so dramatically that they eventually joined forces with Christina and locked Rick in a basement. As ridiculous as that sounds, the chemistry and comedic timing between those women created some genuinely memorable soap opera moments. At the time, it felt like that unlikely alliance had run its course once Rick was freed and everyone went their separate ways. But looking back, I don't think the bond they formed ever completely disappeared. Alexis and Ava are total opposites in almost every way, yet there is something about their dynamic that simply works. When they share scenes, there is always an unpredictable energy that makes me want to see more. That is why I found their trip to New York so interesting. Alexis quickly realized that if she wanted answers about the mysterious Delilah, Ava was the perfect person to bring along. Once Alexis uncovered Delilah's connection to the art world, Ava's experience and connections became invaluable. To me, it made perfect sense that Alexis would rely on someone she once considered an enemy because Ava operates in a world Alexis knows very little about. One thing that stood out was Alexis watching Ava navigate the New York art scene. She seemed genuinely impressed by how effortlessly Ava handled her conversation with gallery owner Apollo. For longtime soap fans, Apollo's appearance was a fun surprise, especially given Michael Preed's television history. I was wondering whether this was just a brief guest spot or if the show might have bigger plans for the character. Ava once again proved why she is such a formidable player. She managed to convince Apollo to reveal a photo of Delilah. And that discovery opened an entirely new layer of the mystery. The bigger shock, however, was seeing a familiar face connected to it all: Ethan. That reveal immediately raised a lot of questions. Alexis and Ava were clearly stunned, and I think viewers were right there with them. Suddenly, a storyline that seemed focused on uncovering Delilah's past became much larger. Ethan's involvement suggests there are still major pieces of the puzzle missing. What makes this even more intriguing is Ava's recent connection with Ethan. Their interactions hinted at a possible spark, and now the mystery has placed him directly in the center of the investigation. Whether that leads to romance, danger, or a major family secret remains to be seen. My prediction could be completely wrong, but I feel like Ethan's connection to Delilah is not a random twist. Soap operas rarely bring back a character and immediately tie them to a mystery unless there is a significant payoff waiting down the road. I suspect Alexis and Ava's search for answers is only beginning, and the deeper they dig, the more complicated this story is going to become. For me, the biggest takeaway is that Alexis and Ava have become one of the show's most unexpectedly enjoyable partnerships. The mystery is interesting, but watching these two navigate it together may end up being the real highlight of the storyline. I think Michael Corinthos may be about to take his manipulation game to a whole new level. And if this theory plays out, it could create chaos for multiple relationships at once. From the way I see it, Michael's next move could involve setting up a carefully orchestrated encounter between Willow Tate and Harrison Chase at the Quartermain boathouse. I was wondering how far he might be willing to go, and honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if he cloned Chase's phone number and sent Willow an invitation that appeared to come directly from Chase himself. To me, that would be the smartest way to execute his plan. If Willow believes Chase personally invited her, she would be far more likely to let her guard down. The Quartermain boathouse also provides the perfect setting. Private enough for an unexpected meeting, yet visible enough if Michael wants certain people to witness what happens. What makes this situation even more interesting is that Michael's strategy doesn't seem focused on just one target. I think he's trying to weaken both Willow and Chase emotionally at the same time. His goal appears to be making Willow vulnerable to Chase while also making Chase vulnerable to Willow. At the same time, Michael seems determined to destroy Chase's trust in Brooklyn Quartermain Chase. He reportedly intends to convince Chase that Brooklyn concealed information about a possible connection to the crash involving Curtis and Jordan Ashford. If Chase starts questioning Brooklyn's honesty, that could create exactly the kind of emotional distance Michael needs for the next phase of his plan. What stands out to me is how calculated Michael has become. He understands Willow's emotional triggers better than almost anyone. Rather than openly attacking her, he seems to prefer subtle manipulation, steering events behind the scenes while maintaining the appearance that everything is happening naturally. His conversation with Jacinda Bracken revealed a lot about his mindset. Michael apparently convinced himself that breaking up Brooklyn and Chase would actually be doing Brooklyn a favor. From his perspective, she has gone from being a strong, independent Quartermain woman to someone constantly taking care of a man he views as weak and overly focused on being a hero. Whether that assessment is fair or not is another question entirely, but it shows how Michael is justifying his actions. I also think Michael understands both Willow and Chase on a deeper level than most people. Willow has always been drawn to people she sees as protectors, while Chase has a habit of stepping in whenever someone appears to need saving. Those personality traits could make them especially vulnerable to a setup like this. What makes Michael particularly dangerous in this situation is his history with Chase. The two men were once best friends, and because they lived together at the Quartermain mansion, Michael knows Chase's routines, habits, and schedule. He would know exactly when Chase has a day off and exactly when to arrange circumstances to maximize the impact. If this theory is correct, Michael could time everything down to the minute. Willow receives the fake invitation on one of Chase's days off. Chase is already home. Brooklyn is also at the mansion. Every piece falls into place exactly as Michael intends. The most fascinating detail is the possibility that Brooklyn and Tracy Quartermain leave at the precise moment Willow and Chase are outside the boathouse. They are supposedly heading to a BMW dealership to deal with Brooklyn's black BMW, which has a rattling passenger door and possibly a scratch along the side. If Chase and Willow happen to see that car leaving together at exactly the wrong moment, it could create misunderstandings, spark suspicions, and set off a chain reaction of emotional fallout. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but if Michael is truly pulling the strings behind all of this, it feels less like coincidence and more like a carefully designed trap, one that could leave Willow, Chase, and Brooklyn dealing with consequences they never saw coming. As I look ahead to the upcoming General Hospital episodes, I think Ross Coulson may be on the verge of showing just how dangerous he really is. To me, Coulson has always been one of those characters who operates without loyalty, without compassion, and without any real connections in Port Charles. If these spoilers are pointing in the right direction, his next move could be his darkest yet. During the June 2nd episode, Coulson reportedly comes across some disturbing information. After Jen Sidwell tells him that Danny Morgan was not the person who shot him, Coulson begins reevaluating everything he thought he knew about the attack. Once he starts connecting the dots, he appears to land on a new suspect, Rocco Falconry. From Callum's perspective, Rocco's decision to flee with Britt Westbourne could look like confirmation of guilt. I was wondering if that escape will be the very thing that convinces Callum that Rocco was the one who pulled the trigger on the docks. If that happens, I can easily see Callum taking his theory straight to Sidwell. That conversation could completely change Sidwell's understanding of why Britt disappeared with Rocco in the first place. Up until now, Sidwell has been focused on bringing Britt back to Port Charles because he desperately needs her expertise to finish the cold fusion prototype. The project remains Sidwell's top priority, and Britt has been a crucial part of its development. However, I think Callum may argue that Britt has become a liability rather than an asset. From his twisted point of view, the prototype is reportedly close to completion. If Britt was only hours away from finishing it, Callum might believe someone else can take over the final steps. His focus could shift away from retrieving Britt and toward eliminating potential threats. That is where things become especially concerning. I think Callum may start viewing Britt as a loose end. If she falls into police custody, she could reveal everything she knows about the operation. For someone as ruthless as Callum, that risk may be unacceptable. Because of that, I would not be surprised if he pushes for a deadly solution. What makes this possibility even more chilling is that Britt may not be the only target. If Callum truly believes Rocco shot him, revenge is likely still on his mind. He could also worry that Rocco has learned sensitive information during his time with Britt. That raises a disturbing question. Does Rocco know enough to threaten the entire operation? If the answer is yes, then I think Callum could decide that both Britt and Rocco need to be silenced. In his mind, eliminating them might be the easiest way to protect the project and erase any evidence that could lead back to him or Sidwell. Of course, this is all speculation based on the latest spoilers, and General Hospital is known for delivering unexpected twists. Still, if these clues are accurate, Ross Callum may be preparing to make a move that shocks Port Charles and puts both Britt and Rocco in extreme danger. The biggest mystery now is whether anyone will figure out Callum's plan before it is too late. I think Brooklyn has finally reached her breaking point, and honestly it feels like this reaction has been building for a very long time. For months, I have watched her try to be the understanding wife. She kept giving Chase the benefit of the doubt, even when his loyalty to Willow started raising obvious questions. Brooklyn clearly adores her husband, and I do believe Chase loves her too. But from my perspective, he has developed a habit of rushing to Willow's rescue whenever she finds herself in trouble, and that pattern has become impossible to ignore. What really stands out to me is how much Brooklyn has tolerated. Chase damaged his relationship with her family when he sided with Willow during the accusations surrounding Drew's shooting. Even after that, Brooklyn defended him. She stood by his intentions, supported him when his independent investigation got him demoted, and continued trusting that his connection to Willow was harmless. She even overlooked the fact that Chase repeatedly defended his ex and seemed to drop everything whenever Willow needed help. In some ways, Brooklyn appeared grateful for Willow's involvement in helping with the possible adoption of baby Phoebe. She seemed willing to put aside her discomfort for the sake of her future family. But then came the moment that changed everything. When Brooklyn unexpectedly witnessed that overly intimate hug between Chase and Willow, I think something finally clicked. To her, it was no longer a simple friendship. It looked like emotional boundaries had been crossed. All the frustration, insecurity, and suspicion she had been suppressing suddenly surfaced. For the first time, she stopped being patient and understanding and directly told Willow to back off. To me, that scene felt like the birth of a completely different Brooklyn. Instead of quietly accepting situations that make her uncomfortable, she is finally taking control. Her marriage matters to her. Her hopes of adopting Phoebe matter to her. And she is no longer willing to sit back and watch another woman occupy so much emotional space in her husband's life. The problem, however, is that Brooklyn may not fully understand what she is stepping into. I could be wrong, but it feels like she still underestimates Willow. While Brooklyn sees her as a rival who needs boundaries, there may be much darker motivations and manipulations happening behind the scenes. If that is true, Brooklyn could be placing herself in a dangerous position without even realizing it. Then there is the Michael factor, which makes the entire situation even more complicated. What fascinates me is that Brooklyn has no idea she may be getting manipulated from another direction. While she focuses on Chase and Willow, Michael appears to be quietly influencing her perceptions. By planting doubts about the relationship between his cousin's husband and Willow, he seems to be pushing Brooklyn toward exactly the reaction he wants. If that is really his strategy, the consequences could be enormous. The possibility that Michael is willing to let Brooklyn take the fall for the Curtis and Jordan car accident simply to create distance between Chase and Willow is shocking. It suggests a level of calculation that could eventually tear apart family relationships throughout Port Charles. Looking ahead, I think this storyline is setting up major shifts across multiple relationships. Brooklyn's marriage is under pressure. Her trust in Chase is fading. Willow is becoming a larger threat in her eyes, and Michael's secret manipulation could explode into a scandal that affects the entire Quartermaine family. What makes this especially compelling to me is that Brooklyn is finally fighting for what matters most to her. The question is whether she is confronting the real enemy or whether she is being pushed into a battle that someone else carefully orchestrated from the very beginning.